afternoon and welcome to our webinar this afternoon. My name is Sally Reynolds from the Media and Learning Association, and I'm really delighted to be hosting our webinar for the next 90 minutes or so, entitled Building Resilient Communities, Using Media Literacy to Fight Extremism, Hate and Violence. So you're all very, very welcome. We're delighted to be running this session together with our friends and colleagues, Renee Hobbs and her colleagues from the Media Education Lab in the US. So this is a joint session that we're organising this afternoon. And of course, it's in the context of the Global MIL Week, the UNESCO Global MIL Week, which we're all involved in, and we're all running sessions this week. So a couple of quick housekeeping notes before we get started, and then I'll take you through the agenda. First of all, if you can, switch on your camera, because it's lovely to see people, but if you could keep your microphone switched off. We will also, as you can see, we are recording the session this afternoon. And so Chloe, my colleague, will be making editing the video. We'll have it available on our YouTube channel in about 2 weeks' time. And we will also make available the presentations this afternoon. So feel free during the session as well to use the chat section of the screen to post any links you want to put any comments, and most of all, any questions that you have for our panelists as well. We'd also like to invite you, if you could, to change your name so that you indicate the name of the organization that you're joining us from and also the country. It's always nice to know where everybody is joining us from this afternoon. And to do that, you just go onto the participants list, you click on your name, 3 little dots, press the 3 little dots, and you can rename yourself. And so it's really nice to see where everyone's joining us from. We know people will be continuing to join us this afternoon as the session goes on. So you're all very, very welcome. Let me just remind you what the agenda is before we get started. So we have 3 really interesting presentations, we think very focused on the title of our session this afternoon. First of all, Renee and Pam Steager are going to present the CourageousRI, Applying Media Literacy to Depolarize project. Then we'll hear from Caroline Lindekamp from CoRRECTIV in Germany, who's going to present Faktenforum. And then finally, Jeff Kaufmann is going to be joining us from SNJ, which is a Service National de la Jeunesse in Luxembourg, to present NOHATEONLINE campaign and Be Secure Spotline. So after that, we'll have panel discussion and lots of opportunities to ask questions of our speakers this afternoon and to share your own ideas about what is sadly something that faces us all in terms of tackling hate and tackling violence online. So without too much further ado, I think I've done all of my introductions correctly. I'd like to hand over to Renee and to Pam to take us through the first presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. We're so happy to be here. Happy Global Media Literacy Week to everyone. Hey, Pam.
Hi, Renee.
So we are going to tell you the story of our journey of learning with Courageous Rhode Island, which was a federally funded media literacy initiative supported by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Pam and I built this program around a key principle we call the power of 2. Pam, what is the power of 2?
Well, it's just based on the idea that 2 heads are better than 1, and that when you work in partnership, you can bounce ideas off of each other and come up with better ideas in the end.
There you go. So I'm going to share, we instead of using slides, we thought we would just take you to the website. Pam, can you put the link to the website, the CourageousRI website, into the chat while I kind of talk a little bit about what we're going to try to do in just 15 minutes? Tell the story of CourageousRI by giving you a website tour, right? Which then might encourage you to go explore the website more deeply. So the program was designed to use media literacy and active listening to reduce the fear and hate that leads to violence. And the journey that we went on, right, was 3 parts, right? We came to the conclusion along the way, along the journey of learning that we went on, we came to recognize 4 main pillars of this work: active listening, media literacy, kindness and compassion, and community engagement. Where we started, like many of us do, is with a manifesto. And it was kind of baked into our proposal that was a $750,000 grant, right? We thought we'll build a statewide learning community to counter extremist violence. And we knew, as you all do, what the issues are. Inequality and polarization growing by leaps and bounds. Hate being intentionally cultivated as intolerance has gone mainstream. The new 21st century ecosystem that changes the way we encounter new and unfamiliar ideas, the importance of media literacy as a mechanism for critical thinking, the power of compassion and listening with an open heart, and the importance of amplifying a youth voice, right? So we started with that. That's the starting place. We decided that the best way to articulate this vision was through 3 programs. The first was targeted to adults. It was called Courageous Conversations, community dialogues held fully online that bring people together to advance media literacy and deep listening. The second was an educator program, which offered lesson plans and curriculum materials and a professional development learning experience for a group of educators ranging from middle school to college. And the third part of the journey was the youth media contest, where we invited middle school to college youth to create multimedia that explores the relationship between media literacy, active listening, kindness and compassion, and community engagement, and to submit creative work reflecting that. Now, let's be honest, Pam, we did experience some pushback in this program, didn't we? We'll
We
start
sure
with
did.
that. Yeah.
Right from the get-go.
Right from the get-go, skeptics, critics, and conservatives said, what are you spending government money to do this for? And isn't this another form of disinformation? And so we had haters we had to contend with, and we continue to we continue to be in dialogue with them. Let's put it that way. Just last week, Pam published an op-ed in the Providence Journal where she talks back to those folks, right, who might not really understand our motives. I thought maybe, since we only have a little bit of time to sort of front load, what was the impact of the program? So on this 2-year journey, what happened? Pam, talk to us about what was the big impact with Courageous Conversations?
Well, we had
the Ripple program.
Yeah, well, we had over 1,200 participants, as you can see, and we trained over 20 facilitators to help us roll out the program and learn in the process of being trained as facilitators. We had 11 different content sessions that were given twice a day, so 22 sessions in all that were all online. And this is the topics that we covered. The first one was an overview of the program. We talked about why media literacy matters, preventing violent extremism, high conflict.
What's high conflict, Pam?
Well, high conflict was something we learned from Amanda Ripley's book called High Conflict. And we were so impressed with what that former journalist did when she decided to leave journalism, because she realized that even journalism was becoming a part of the problem. And she wanted to travel around the country and find out, why are people so polarized? And high conflict was the result of her book. And she very generously allowed us to interview her in one of our podcasts, and she was just great. And we learned the term conflict entrepreneurs from her too. So we actually created 2 sessions out of the concepts from her book. Conflict entrepreneurs, we learned, are those people who use the media, and especially social media, for stirring up emotions and anger and hostility that lead to violence for profit, pleasure or power?
Yeah.
And then we went on to talk about feelings and facts and the influencers and free speech, hate speech, and censorship, targets of propaganda, falling down the rabbit hole, and finally the ripple effect. Along the way, we realized we didn't want the conversations to stop there, that we were so thrilled with how engaged our audiences were and how hungry they were for this information that we announced that anyone who had taken any of the topics of courageous conversations, if they wanted to replicate a part of it in their own community, in their library, in their school, in their church group, in their book group, any uh, place where they had 6 or more people, we would actually use some of our funding to pay them to replicate the program. So tell us the results of what we got out of that, Renee.
Well, it was pretty amazing. So the Courageous Conversations program rippled out into 30 different events all over the world, Pam. You had participants, because we quickly learned that while we intended this to be a statewide event, because it was online, people came from all over the world. So we said to the Department of Homeland Security, guess what? This has transcended Rhode Island. Rhode Island only has 1 million people, by the way, right? So it was a natural thing for us to grow. What I am very proud of is we did a lot of research for this project. And one of the things we did was we measured people's knowledge gain and their application. At the beginning of the session, we said, how much do you know on a 10-point scale about X, the topic? At the end of the session, how much do you know? On average, the sessions had a 35% knowledge gain. So people had a meaningful increase in knowledge that they could articulate. But then 2 weeks later, when they came, many of them came back, many of them participated in 8, 9, 10 sessions. When they came back, we said, hey, listen, if you were at the last session, in the last 2 weeks, did you apply anything of what you learned in your daily life? And on average, 81% said yes. So people found this information content really relevant. In the professional development program, which was the second part of our journey, we reached 54 educators with a modest professional development program, 10 hours total, right? And because each of those educators reaches 120 students on average, the impact was pretty considerable. Each of these educators developed a plan that they implemented with their own students. And you can see here, because these were smart teachers who were kind of already engaged, the knowledge gain was less. They didn't learn as much as the adults, but they applied, right? And then our final part of the program was the youth media contest. Pam, what was that all about?
Well, we decided that we really wanted to hear from youth, and as a way, as we always do it, the Media Education Lab reach out to youth and try and inform them in whatever way possible. And so we offered cash prizes for their submissions in either audio, video, graphic design, or writing, and they what we did was encourage them to go to our website, look at the topics, which we hoped would engage them, and they would learn that way, and then create their own message for their peer groups or for whatever their target audience was, and become creators of media, which we believe is a really important part of media literacy.
Yeah. So we only have 5 minutes remaining, so we thought we would dig in to what's inside the curriculum materials we created. We created videos. We created a listening curriculum because our educators said to us, look, who teaches listening? How do you teach listening? What does it mean to learn how to be a better listening? So we created a listening curriculum. We developed a packet of creative expression projects. We have a marvelous, simply marvelous collection of curated educator resources. If you only have 15 minutes as a busy teacher, check out these resources. If you have 30 minutes, check out these resources on each of the 10 topics. So really inviting teachers to sort of continue to explore the range of great materials. Some of the people in this room actually are listed. Their resources, your resources are on our curated list. But Pam, why don't we dig into one of them? Which one should we give them a tour of? Which one should we talk about?
Well, I really liked Feelings and Facts because
Feelings
that
and
really
Facts.
talked a lot about how especially conflict entrepreneurs use emotions and strong emotions to catch people, to hook people and falling down the rabbit hole.
Sweet. And so we had conversations with adults and we created a lot of really great curriculum materials, all of which are available here, right? All kinds of cool stuff. But we also wanted people to understand what it meant to participate in a conversation about feelings and facts. So we collaborated with a place at MIT called the Center for Constructive Communication. And we found a great way to use the data of the conversations, because these conversations happen with a group with 143 people joined us on May 23rd to talk about feelings and facts. But the main part of the show was a 20-minute small group discussion where groups of 6 to 9 people explored questions. So in this session, the 3 questions were, what are some conspiracy theories that you've encountered recently? What are the different feelings that these stories evoke for you? Which of these conspiracy theories are harmless? Which ones are harmful? And the MIT tool let us show you what those conversations included.
I know it brings up that discomfort of kind of feeling like you might not be in the same tribe as someone, which can be a really uncomfortable feeling when you're trying to have this conversation with someone and you keep brushing up against very different understandings or ways of viewing the world.
Right. So some might feel the need to protect themselves.
A lot of conspiracy theories are constructed to demonize some group and to, draw not just a dividing line, but a very activated, I need to protect myself from them, or they are very dangerous to somebody else,
So we really appreciated the chance to.
I belong to a pickleball group now with a lot of people who are over 60, and it just drives me crazy because I'm finding that generation of people that I talk to every day believe a lot of the misinformation and disinformation.
So people got to talk in conversation about these issues, and we share a little bit about the research showing they perceived a meaningful knowledge gain. They applied what they learned, and the takeaways that they told us at the end of the session were that they understand the power of narrative persuasion, right? They started to understand the difference between conspiracy theories and conspiracies, right? That those are separate ideas, right? And why conspiracy theories tend to linger longer, why they are hard to disrupt, and what harm they can create, and why and how it's important to engage in critical thinking. So we really appreciated the chance to be able to let people experience the power of dialogue and discussion as a means to help people find common ground. So we invite you to explore the website to see the great resources and materials. We think if there's only one thing that you explore, it's the power of the discussion questions themselves. They're crisp, they're tight, and we have very strong evidence that these discussions enable adults and educators to have productive discussions that lead to real learning. Thanks very much.
Super. Thank you so much, Renee and Pam. That is really, really great to read all about that, to hear all about that. And I see, thank you, Yonti's already replying to Wakas in the chat about follow-up afterwards, because of course all these resources are available, as Renee's saying. They're there, they can be reused. I presume they're on a Creative Commons license, Renee and Pam, are they? So that everybody can use them? Great. Okay, so they have a CC license so you can use. A couple of questions I wanted to get in quickly before we move on to our next speaker. Sergio, hi Sergio, good to see you again. He says that given the social media algorithms promote polarization because it drives engagement, don't you think we're operating in a hate capitalism system rather than just fostering polarization entrepreneurs? What do you think?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Structure, the way we address structure was limited in this program, and where we got into it was how should platform companies be regulated. That's the session called Free Speech, Hate Speech, and Censorship. And that was a great opportunity for us to understand where adults are at in their baseline understanding about media regulation, right? And where and how to engage a group of adults in thinking about the role of regulation and the trade-offs. Now, in Europe, you guys have a very strong approach already in place. Woo-hoo, lucky you.
Hey,
right?
We have the DSA.
That's it. But in the US, our adult peers are really at a very beginning place in thinking about what's the appropriate balance of regulation and freedom that are needed for these capitalist companies that are basically profiting from our attention. But we saw movement in the way adults could learn about these topics, even in the context of just a 1-hour discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think we could have a whole different discussion on that. So, but let's move on. I'm just going to take one more question there before we go to the next speaker. Thanks, Julia, from Formazione in Italy. Would it be possible to have some more details about the adult people you targeted, age, gender, occupation, educational background, etc.? I must admit that was kind of a question I really wanted to ask you as well too. I mean, when you're recruiting adults like this, you're probably already recruiting the converted. So just how did you get your adults? Who were they? How did you bring them in?
And one of the things that we did was we reached out to all kinds of crazy suspects. We went to the Rhode Island Department of Health. Tell her about our experience with the National Guard.
Oh yeah, we went and talked to the two head honchos at the Rhode Island National Guard and asked them, because we'd done our research about what the specific target populations were that were most affected by disinformation, and especially the ones, you know, that were a part of January 6th insurrection and things like that. And we targeted them specifically. We went to the Rhode Island Police Chiefs Association. We went to the Rhode Island Superintendents Association.
We reached out to the Rotaries, right? And the Elk Clubs. I went on AM talk radio.
Yeah.
Like 7 times trying to get the right-wing folks into the room, right?
And it worked.
We got them in.
Well done. I think before you get all of us in as well too, let's move on to the next speaker if we may. But I think, Julia, probably you could follow up in the chat just also with Renee or Pam. I'm sure they'd be happy, and with Yonti to tell you more about how they recruited. Without further ado, I'm going to move on to our next speaker. But over here in Europe, I'm really delighted to welcome our good friend Caroline Lindekamp from CoRRECTIV in Germany, and she's going to talk about Faktenforum and how they operate and run Faktenforum. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you, Pam and Renee, for this great presentation. It's great to see your energy and how you manage to bring together different approaches tailored to your communities. I will be talking about CoRRECTIV Faktenforum, but before I get into the project, let me give you a brief introduction into the German context and also in my organization. So I'm working with CoRRECTIV, and I think especially for those who have joined us from abroad, we are a non-for-profit media organization, actually Germany's first non-for-profit media organization. And early this year, we published an investigative piece on the so-called secret plan against Germany, which has been drafted by some extreme right forces within Germany. And maybe some of you have heard of it, even though you might have never heard of CoRRECTIV before. And because also this publication sparked like a lot of interest all across the country, and there have been numerous manifestations and demonstrations across Germany. What you see here on the map was actually, if I remember right, I think it was the 3rd weekend of January, and this were only like the demonstrations that had been taking place at that very day. And it was great to see, I think also now looking at it with some distance. Obviously, I'm a bit biased talking about it because it has also been triggered like by my organization, the organization I'm working for. However, I think it's great to see like what impact journalism can actually have, because for long we have been saying that these people who are interested in safeguarding our democracy have been like a very silent minority, and all of a sudden you have seen them on the streets, and there's so many, and it's great to see that there's actually engagement for our system against these forces who regularly try to undermine our democracy. So if you look at the publication, I've been a bit too quick, there has been a lot of talk about like remigration, so like more like the racist aspects that have been raised at that secret meeting in Potsdam. But there's also been another aspect that has been very important. This is like a quotation from the article that has been published on our website in many languages. And what you see here, especially in the right paragraph, so they moved on to talk about how can they actually put their plans into action. And so there was talk about influencers, propaganda, campaigns, university projects. And they were thinking of tools to establish a right-wing anti-established climate, and ultimately tools to weaken Germany's democracy by questioning elections, by discrediting constitutional courts, suppressing opposing views, and censoring public service broadcasting. So if you look at this enumeration, I mean, everybody who's following a bit up on the disinformation agenda, I'm sure you can think of a particular false claim that has been raised and going like in either one or the other direction. And the question now is, so if there are obviously forces who are driving extremism in Germany and of course also in Europe and around the world, what can we do to prevent this? And the question is actually, when do disinformation do harm and what can we do against it? And usually, like the distinction when we talk about the different countermeasures is between pre-bunking and debunking. I think most of you in the audience have probably heard those terms, so we really very quickly get over it. So it's either actually do we take preemptive initiatives, so kind of to inoculate society and people against disinformation, or do we take reactive measures? For example, we do fact-checking to debunk false claims. And yeah, and this is a bit of a question also if you look at different approaches, should we do pre-bunking or debunking? I always like to underline, let's not play one initiative against the other. The problem is big enough that we should go for both of them. So that's definitely the right way. Let's do pre-bunking and debunking. And we do so at CoRRECTIV. Here you see some of our examples. I won't get into detail what we do in terms of pre-bunking. So we've published a book on the very topic. We provide a lot of learning material. We have done inoculation videos on different social media channels with different target groups, might it be teachers or adolescents. And we also do a lot of events and workshops where we really try to reach out to people. And then there's, of course, our fact-checking newsroom. And so they publish fact-check articles on our website and make sure that they distribute them on a variety of channels so that they get a high reach out. And now what we try to do actually in the project I'm presenting to you today, finally, is how can we combine these different approaches that we are already putting into action. And the idea is a bit to increase our efforts in pre-bunking or make them more sustainable by combining them with debunking. So how are we actually doing this? As I said, like we have these diverse approaches towards disinformation already. For example, we also try to integrate our users into the whole process. So we have users who are submitting suspicious claims to our fact-checking newsroom. And of course, they're also in reverse sharing our fact-check articles. And regularly, we have users joining our media literacy classes. And now the idea with Faktenforum is actually that we want to transfer the idea of citizen journalism onto fact-checking. How can we integrate users or like average citizens into that process of debunking false claims? we started at the beginning of this year, we started building like a community of citizen fact checkers. And the idea is, I mean, so they continue joining our trainings. For example, we have a bi-weekly, on a bi-weekly basis, we offer webinars to them, which can be like, they're always topic related, of course, but it might be that we are really teaching on how to apply certain tools, but it can also be just around like to discuss topics related to disinformation and fact checking. And the idea now with Faktenforum is what we explain in workshops, for example, for an hour, to provide them a space where they can put what they have learned into action to make it more sustainable, and also to open them a space where they can actually, well, to empower them so that they can have like an impact. And I already mentioned our event calendar. So we are offering regular online events on the topics. We also have like different learning materials that they can access. We have opened a Discord server to build a community that they can regularly exchange and also do fact checks on actual false claims on the Discord server. And I have to see what's the next slide actually. Yeah, and this is actually our Discord server. And here's an example that I took. You cannot read it, but it's in German anyway. But I will explain what it is. We had like a few weeks ago, we had regional elections in Germany, in Eastern Germany, in 3 different states in Eastern Germany. And it turned out that the extreme right party has been quite strong. The research, the investigations that I presented at the beginning, maybe already pointed at that direction and the threat that there is to public discourse. And I think what is important here on the server is like we have about 300 members on our platform at the moment. And they do not only have a chance to debunk claims, but they also have a chance to connect with one another and to go beyond their direct community. So, and also the elections in these Eastern German states has been widely discussed among our community. And myself, I'm living in the Western German part. So I'm not from one of these regions. And some of the news that were popping up around the election, I actually first heard of them on Discord from our community members. And I think it's a great example also on how we can open a space for dialogue. So it's not only about learning about disinformation and fact checking. It's not only about doing fact checks themselves, but it's also to bring different people from different regions, from different backgrounds, from different groups in contact with one another and to exchange. And I think this is really important because often I think we tend to look at disinformation as a secluded problem. But I mean, what makes a problem so big is actually underlying problems like fear or mistrust in institutions, in public, etc. And I think creating space also for people to connect with one another can increase trust and also gives them some tools at hand on how to navigate in their everyday lives. And also talking about dialogue, I would like to point at the publication that has been done from my colleagues from the fact-checking newsroom, which I think is also a great example for media literacy. Well, campaign is maybe too much said, but it's definitely a great piece of journalism with a strong aspect of media literacy and education. I can later post the link in the chat as well. Otherwise, you can maybe use the QR code here. This is a piece particularly on climate fakes. And what they did, instead of just writing an article about it, they designed personas and they had like people having a discussion. And, you know, for example, you had a barbecue party with your family and someone is coming up, oh, I don't know, I think, for example, electric cars won't solve the problems, they're only making everything worse. And so they wrote an article on how you can have a conversation with someone who believes in such false claims to provide them with facts, but also with some tactics on how to run the conversation. Yeah. And maybe at the end, after these examples, also a short announcement. We've actually, this week, as I mentioned, we're on Discord at the moment. And this week, we're moving some of our community members from Discord onto our own platform, because part of my team are also 2 developers. And we're building our own community platform to really have it tailored to our needs. And we are planning a big launch event on December 5th, which is, I think, at the moment, especially interesting maybe for those among you who are German speaking. But this will then like a big launch event where we afterwards also try to scale the community and the project. And why are we actually building our own platform? One is it's quite a lot of work actually to build a platform this way. So it has been like a year preparation to get our first prototype. But the idea is really that we can, like what we want to do with our community, which is like learning, doing fact checks together, exchanging on the topic, that we have it all in one place. And also it allows us to build a database of fact checks and false claims that we can then leverage also to build AI tools or implement AI-based assistant tools. And the idea, like to apply such technologies, is really to make participation possible, because we're working with people who are not professional journalists, and we really want to motivate as many people as possible with completely different educational backgrounds. And we're looking into ways on how can we make that process accessible. And this is why we think that technology can be very useful in that context. Yeah, and I think this was actually, yeah, pretty much my last slide.
Caroline, thank you so much.
This is actually a survey we have done quite a while ago when we decided to start the project. And you can have a look at some of the quotations why people might be motivated to join the project.
Thank you so much. You'll see some questions in the chat that you might like to reply to directly yourself. Thanks for the link. Is the article only in German? I guess yes, Caroline, but it can be translated, of course, using a tool.
Yeah, at the moment, as far as I know, it's only in German. We sometimes, some of our background pieces, we also translate them into different languages. But I think even if you only look at how the article is set up, I think you can already get some great input and ideas.
Thanks, Caroline. I'm going to go back, actually. There's a question a little bit earlier from Asli, who's joining us from Iran, and he points to the fact that, of course, Iran, as many parts of the world, is a diverse country, including various ethnic and religious groups. So he asks you and the others that are the leading sessions today just to talk a little bit about the cultural challenges that you faced and how you've managed to face these cultural challenges. I was particularly interested to talk about bringing groups together. You know, how do you do that? Do you go into certain religious groups or certain clubs, or how do you do that?
Actually, so far, this has not really been a topic. I think generally religion is maybe not the strongest factor that we are having in mind at the moment. I think a bigger question for us is, for example, how do we handle people with like different political beliefs or opinions? And generally what we say is also, I mean, for example, we don't do party politics, and whatever people are interested in, they're welcome on our platform. The only thing they have to do is they have to adhere to our standards, which is when we're working is objectivity, first of all, and the need to provide checkable sources. And the other is then, of course, also how community members get along with one another. And this has also been one reason why we decided to go for our own platform, because on our own platform, we can implement a user rights system, for example, and also assist our community moderators on how to manage the community to make sure that it's like a healthy community and a respectful one.
I think if you could share those kind of criteria that you use, I think for Asli and others, that would be really useful when you're setting up these kinds of community get-togethers, people with different cultural and other backgrounds. It would be useful to know what are the ground rules that you agree beforehand, so that everybody's stepping into, whether it's an online or a face-to-face situation, say, okay, those are the rules. After that, then it's dialogue. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I think that is everything that we have for the moment in the chat. So I'd like to move on then, if I may, to our third speaker this afternoon. So I'm delighted to welcome Jeff Kaufmann from Service National de la Jeunesse, SNJ, in Luxembourg, who is going to present the NOHATEONLINE campaign and also the Be Secure Spotline. So Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Please,
Hello.
over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us, and thank you also for all the speakers, by the way. My name is Jeff Kaufmann. I work for the National Youth Service of Luxembourg on the project called Be Secure. First off, I need to excuse my colleague Debora Plein, who couldn't join short notice. To start off, I'd like Chloe to start right away with the video which gives a description of Be Secure. the Safe Internet Center of Luxembourg.
The internet simplifies our lives in many ways. We can access information from all over the world and remain accessible at all times. Unfortunately, this convenience comes with risks and insecurities. Be Secure raises awareness about how we can all use the internet safely and responsibly. Be Secure regularly visits children and young people in schools, maisons relais, and youth houses. Carers are also informed, both at parents' evenings and during training sessions for teachers and educators. In addition to the trainings, Be Secure offers information and a series of publications available on the Be Secure website. The Be Secure helpline provides anonymous, confidential and free advice on topics such as cyberbullying and online scams. Advice on safer device settings can also be given. The phone number 8002-1234 is open to everyone, children, youngsters and adults. The Be Secure Stopline is a website for reporting illegal and criminal content. This includes child sexual abuse material, racism, discrimination and terrorism. This content can be reported anonymously on the website stopline.be-secure.lu. Once checked, the report is forwarded to the competent authorities. Further information, as well as our Be Secure helpline and Be Secure Stopline, can be accessed via the website www.be-secure.lu. Be Secure, for a safer and positive use of the internet.
Okay, so that was the description of the initiative of the Safe Internet Center of Luxembourg, Be Secure. Because I heard that some people are here from all over the world, I just want to give you a brief geographical context of Luxembourg. It is a small country right in middle of Western Europe, between Belgium, Germany and France. We've got it's a small country with a small population of 660,000 people, approximately, of which 49% are foreigners. We also speak 3 different languages here in Luxembourg. Luxembourgish, German and French, and also sometimes we speak in English. So that's just to get to know in which context we as BCQ are working. We are also quite, in a way, and just give me a time. Okay. We are also quite connected at European level. First, we have the Big Strategy Plus, in which we work. It stands for Better Internet for Kids. It's an initiative which focuses on making the digital environment safer and more supportive for children. And you can find more information on the link below. Then we are also part of broader networks of safe internet centers across Europe. These networks work together to protect children online. Then there's the Digital Europe program, which actually supports the funding and also the development of projects such as our Safe Internet Center of Luxembourg. And quite lastly, the Digital Services Act is a significant EU regulation aimed at ensuring really the accountability of our online platforms, particularly in how they handle illegal content, to make them accountable for what they do. And we're also part of this movement, as we also want to raise awareness on the Digital Services Act here in Luxembourg. So these kind of form our backbone in which we work on in European frame. Today I'm going to talk about an awareness raising initiative which we launched in 2022, a campaign called NOHATEONLINE. Then I'm going to follow up with our Be Secure Stopline and the work it does. And then hopefully there will be room for some questions. First off, awareness raising. Our need to raise awareness on online hate. So online hate, especially xenophobic, anti-Semitism, and also political hate speech, it really increased during the Corona pandemic. And also social media became kind of a hotspot here in Luxembourg for hate speech and violence. Survey also revealed that especially young people in Luxembourg, they identified online hate and violence as their worst experience. Therefore, back in 2024 or 22, BCCure launched the No Hate Online campaign to promote mutual respect online, combat hate speech, and also inform children, young people, but also the general public about, well, freedom of expression and its legal limits here in Luxembourg. Throughout the year of 2022, 4 of these posters were featuring positive messages were displayed nationwide in public spaces, in schools, youth centers, and other key locations. One stated, "Yes to your opinion, no to hate. Don't look away, take action. Discrimination has no place on the internet either, and show respect." And the campaign also expanded to social media, incorporating videos and tailored messages for each platform. And we work together with influencers from Luxembourg to share the No Hate Online messages with their communities online. At the core of the campaign is the website nohateonline.lu. It is still available in Luxembourgish and in English. It offers general recommendations for combating online hate speech. It also connects to the BCCure Spotline website, where the public in Luxembourg can anonymously report illegal content, including hate speech. As mentioned before in the video, when a report falls under the scope of the BCCure Stopline's operators, the information regarding the illegal content is then forwarded to the local authorities in Luxembourg. And I'll talk more about that soon and also show you some numbers of these reports. On this website, which is particularly important and good to see, it features the quiz, "Is it okay to say that?" It encourages users to reflect on the limits of freedom of expressions. So users are presented with various hate speech examples, and they must then evaluate whether they consider these statements to be illegal or not. But we are always here in a Luxembourgish context with Luxembourgish laws. It's important to say. These statements, just to come back to this, those were real comments that were made here in Luxembourg on social media, which were then reported to our BCCure Spotline. So what is this BCCure Spotline? It's actually also a website. It's a website where you as public can report anonymously 3 kinds of illegal content. First off, child sexual abuse images, also known as pedopornography, racism, revisionism, and discrimination, and also terrorism and inciting crime. And the aim of the BCCure Spotline is really to allow the public to take civic action by reporting this content they've come across on the internet, on forums, on blogs, websites, but most of them are really found on social media. And here you see what is really done on the BCCure Spotline. So it can be reported anonymously to us via an online form where users will provide details about the content, the website, and the contents. Once the report is submitted, if it's deemed within scope, a technical and investigation is done by our BCCure Spotline team to identify also the hosting country of the information. The information is then forwarded to our police, or if hosted internationally, it is forwarded to a partner within the InHope network I was talking about before. As once the content is at the law enforcement, we are out of it and we let the police handle the content. Here you see a brief overview of the last, well, nearly 10 years of reports which we got at the BCCure Spotline. For the reported cases, there's a general upward trend over the years with a significant increase from 2018, 124 reports to 2020, 292 reports. Then after a slight dip in 2022, the numbers of reports sharply rose again in 2023. And also now in 2024, we had 372 reports as of now, from January to September. Of the forwarded reports, which means that the content that we saw of hate speech is considered to be legal by our team. We also saw a significant increase over here. If you take a look at what kind of reports we have here, the number of reports is really highly dependent on current global events. Like, for example, since the outbreak of the Israel-Palestine conflict, there has been a significant increase in reports related to anti-Semitism and also anti-Muslim statements. Then, of course, also national events such as the discussion which we had recently about discussing LGBTQIA+ topics in schools. They have also led to a rise in the reports. So despite our efforts also with the No Hate Online campaign on awareness raising, the numbers continue to rise, indicating that, well, it's still essential to strengthen efforts about hate speech online. So what actually happens here in Luxembourg once the reports are forwarded to the police? So police may identify the individuals responsible for the content, and depending on the severity of the offense and the individual's criminal background, different actions may follow. In some cases, there might just be like an invitation from the police to the individual, which leads to an exchange with the police. Other individuals, they may be required to attend a program called Dialog statt Hass, which means dialogue instead of hate. It is aimed at addressing their behavior, but for more serious offenses, legal proceedings can also be initiated, leading to penalties such as fines or imprisonment, which has happened in the past. If you take a look at the profile of these individuals committing hate speech here in Luxembourg, they often seem to belong to an older demographic, particularly the 50+ age group. So that was all about it, which I had to talk about.
Thank you, Jeff. How interesting. Thank you. It's been a really, really interesting to hear from you. Anyone has any questions for Jeff, put them into the chat if you don't mind. I have a ton of questions, I must admit. And also just first of all, on that quiz, which looks to me like a really useful tool in terms of making people aware as to what they can and they can't say and understand the laws. Is that available for others to use?
Yes, it is available in Luxembourgish and in English, so
great. And
you can test it out. Yeah, I think it's
there
are 9 comments which you can assess personally.
Great.
Yeah.
And then I presume then for localization in different countries and different regions, then of course it's a case of working then with the legal structures that reflect. But thank you so much. So I was going to come in. Oh, thank you very much. I hope I pronounced this correctly. Kais Alamdar. Are there any particular threats facing your initiative at the moment, Jeff?
Which way do you mean threats? Which kind of mean? If we get threats for initiative?
First of all, yeah, and what
physical threats? Well, we have received some threats in the past because well, some people think that we kind of are promoting censorship online and denouncing other people online, that we give a platform to people to denounce other people committing hate speech. Yes, so there have been threats, and we avoid to share our addresses, office addresses with people. Yes.
Yeah, I can imagine. In fact, Kais really meant more the challenges that you face. What are the challenges that you face in this work? So indeed, personal security is one of them. I presume ongoing funding. Can you continue to be funded? Is it a well-established program, or do you face issues?
It's actually an initiative initiated by the Luxembourgish government. So it's being financed by the Ministry of Education. And we are co-funded by the European Commission via the Digital Europe program. So as of now, funding is secured for next few years. Just to talk about challenges, the biggest challenge with raising awareness is to really get to the people which you need to get to with your actions. That's the most difficult thing, because usually if we host events to raise awareness, the people who show up are already all aware.
Yeah, I think that's probably something that all of our all of our activists this afternoon will reflect on. We'll come back to that probably a little bit later. How do you reach the hard to reach? But I just wanted to ask you, because you mentioned working with influencers, and I was just curious how you do that. Do you identify them yourselves? Do you pay them? How does it
Well,
work?
in the frame of our Be Secure campaigns, we work together with communication agencies, which then identify a list of influencers which we could work with. Then we do a selection. We check we do a background check essentially of the influencers, what they did in the past, and then we do a selection, and they also paid for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you have some sort of control in terms of
Yes, and they won't publish or release content without our approval.
Yeah. Do you work with others? I know because of the big campaign, we'll mention that at the end as well, to the Better Internet for Kids campaign running here in Europe. But in the specific work that you're doing about reporting hate speech, do you know of other campaigns like that or other mechanisms like that in Europe or elsewhere?
Actually, if you look at the past, the Be Secure Stopline works as a hotline. On the European level, we say hotline. And there are hotlines in each country that have a safe internet center, and they work together, especially for reporting of the child sexual abuse material. Okay. This way, so there are good collaborations in the frame of the InHope network.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And we can probably if we can find the link, if anybody can find the link for the InHope network, because I think that might be interesting, particularly to people outside Europe, to see how that works. Thank you, Jeff. You're going to stay with us. And in fact, we're going to put all of our panelists back on the spotlight, them all on the screen. And we have time now for an open discussion, which I'm very much looking forward to, because I think you probably have questions for one another, apart from anything else. Thanks, Jeff, for putting in the InHope network. Please put any questions or points of view that you would like to raise with our panelists into the chat, and I will do my best to raise them. But I just kind of wanted to ask you that first. Are there any specific questions you have for one another in terms of the work that you're doing? Renee, I see your mic's on, and Pam.
Well, I think it's comforting to hear about your pushback, and I think we love to commiserate on our pushback because we don't know, we're new to this, right? We haven't experienced folks who seem to be intentionally trying to characterize our program as harmful and wasteful of federal funding, and especially when they use really devious techniques to where they really seem to be like weaponizing our content against us. So that I think is what we're concerned about. Is it seems like it's a coordinated effort to make media literacy a swear word, like critical race theory has become in the United States. So we're concerned that this pushback could basically enlarge beyond our program, which focuses on preventing violence and extremism, to other media literacy initiatives. So we don't know how to nip it in the bud. We don't know how to talk back to them. But it's been, it's a source of concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Caroline, do you face much pushback in the work that you do?
I think generally, at CoRRECTIV, I'm attached to our fact-checking team. And I think when we talk about fact-checking, I think it is nothing new. And you can find reports of that from fact-checking media around the world, that they are a target of hatred. And this is also the case for CoRRECTIV. And I think it only highlights like the relevance of our work. And of course, it's a challenge on how to deal with it. For me personally, I haven't been affected that often, nor has been our project, luckily. But of course, the more you reach out and the more people are aware of the project, of course, you're becoming a more obvious target. And for me, like working in a participatory project, it is especially important on how we can actually protect our community. And once again, like one reason why we actually build our own platform is also that this allows us to implement like certain security standards, like IT security, but also like to safeguard our community from such attacks.
sadly, it's a measure of success, I suppose, is the only way to look at it positively. Maybe we could look a little bit more positively and focus a little bit more on, I'm just wondering, are there any particular tools or strategy that you have found particularly effective in helping individuals identify and resist harmful or extremist content online? Is there any one thing that you thought, that's a really good strategy that you could share with the people who've joined us this afternoon? Pam, maybe I could start with you. Is there anything in particular that you found that's really, really effective? What works?
Yeah, I guess having a background in working with youth in education and communities, I always used community guidelines in our group discussions. And so we used them in Courageous Conversations. And it's just a great tool to, when somebody steps over the line, when somebody wants to be a conflict entrepreneur, you can refer to the guidelines and bring it back. And the group can, be the policeman for that as well. So I'm a big fan of guidelines for conversation. I was also very interested in hearing about Jeff's use of influencers, and at some point would love to know how effective he found that to be. We were late in coming to the use of influencers. I don't think we wrote it into our proposal, but it seemed like a good idea at some point.
Jeff?
Well, the benefit of using influencers is they speak the language of their communities, which follow them. And most of the time, communities also listen more to their influencers because they kind of see them as their quote experts and advice givers. So it's in that sense, it is always good to use them because people listen to them. That's also what we see. You talked about starting early at an early age. We actually start going to public schools in Luxembourg with kids age 8. So we send experts of Be Secure to the schools. We have about 1,400 trainings each year, and they listen to our experts. And when we start talking to them early about what is respect online, if you start early to them talking about cyberbullying, about hate speech, you will get through to them.
That way, I have to do an ad, otherwise I won't be forgiven. We have a session on working with influencers on Friday, so if anybody would like to join us, we're dead keen to explore this because it certainly seems like a good approach. Do you use influencers, Caroline, in Germany?
Yes, we have actually at CoRRECTIV, we had a project going on where we trained influencers, like we invited them to fact-checking workshops to share our standards with them and also to discuss with them what could be means actually on how to spread fact checks also, for example, across their networks, but also on social media in general, and maybe also find different formats and different ways to address the topic. Yeah, and this is definitely one mean. And I think what you mentioned earlier, Pam, I think talking about standards, they are very important in our project also because, I mean, we are not only, but also an output-driven project. And having standards and clearly communicating them helps us to safeguard a certain quality in our output, which we definitely need to have also to be credible. And another thing, I mean, we're building an online project because being online helps us to integrate, like at least in theory, like people from all over Germany and also from places where we cannot travel to because of our resources. However, what I feel is always a very strong tool is actually to meet people in person, like to organize in-person events, because when you're coming together in like one room, and even if you're entering the room with very opposing views, it's usually when you're facing one another, maybe having a coffee together, it very much helps actually to have like dialogue and tensions that sometimes increase, like when you're debating online. I feel a lot easier to handle in person. And also when it comes to converting like people from online events onto our platform or into our community to turn them into regular users. Our experience is also that when we have met people in person, like the conversion rate is considerably higher than from online events. But of course, I mean, in-person events are a lot harder to organize. Yeah.
Yeah, we love our face-to-face, don't we? But still, here we all are together this afternoon in various parts of the world. I'd like to come back to you all in a few minutes in terms of strategies, particularly at older people, because I think, as Jeff mentioned, you know, a lot of the stuff is oriented towards young people, but in fact, it's the older people, and I'm speaking of my generation, who are very often the big culprits here. So come back to that. I mean, first of all, I want to take a couple of questions. It's a question for you, Caroline, from Sergio. He says, how do you avoid editorializing when you run a fact-checking outlet?
What do you mean with editorializing?
Having your own opinion, I suspect, your own editorial opinion. Is that what you mean, Sergio?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think yeah.
Yeah, I think that, well, I hope that's the essence of it, Sergio. Yeah. Having your own editorial take, if you like.
Yeah, I think we are often asked that question also when it comes to fact checking in general. But I think, I mean, objectivity is a very high standard in journalism in general, and this very much, or even more so, applies to fact checking. And what we have, like, I mean, no fact check is an opinion piece if it's well done. So, I mean, what we actually do is we just provide people with facts to contextualize information and claims, and based on these facts and information, make their own decisions. So it's not at all that we want to, I don't know, spread our own political opinions or anything. And of course, I know you can also, you can still keep like certain standards, but convey like a certain tendency through selection of facts. But I think like, since we are building like an open community, and we know, of course, there are certain people who are more likely to join our community than others. However, we are very open to everyone. And I think like having like diverse mindsets in one room, which is not like a room, but on one platform, so to say. I mean, this can also help to balance different views. And it's also, I mean, I don't know, I didn't talk in detail about the screenshot of our tool, but what we do, like when we are doing a fact check, it's not that there's like one individual community member doing a fact check, but it's like everyone who is interested in joining the discussion, there's always a discussion forum attached to each individual fact check. So it's really also about the process of getting there. And I think in this way, we try to avoid having strong opinions in our work and in the community that are unbalanced.
Thanks, that's very clear.
Sally,
yeah,
our program has a kind of similar but allied complication, and we kind of discovered it along the journey, and it came really strongly into the discussion called "Falling Down the Rabbit Hole," which was really about the pathways to radicalization. And one thing that came up so strongly in that program from the school resource officers, who are basically the policemen in the community, and from the educators was, and this might reflect kind of cultural differences that might be different in the United States than in Europe, of course, is that it was really important to avoid pathologizing the normal transgressive behavior that is part of intellectual development and questioning, and in fact challenging authority. So, for example, Jeff's your description of how the police are involved, this would never fly in the United States. Our state attorney general basically said, look, we don't want to we're protecting free speech, right? And we're not going to criminalize people who are, you know, saying transgressive, hateful things. Hate speech is protected in the United States, and that's a big difference between the US and Europe, right? So we were really careful to help people understand that we weren't encouraging educators to report on kids who like put a Nazi symbol on their tennis shoe. If they drew a little Nazi symbol on their tennis shoe, that didn't necessarily mean they were a criminal. It meant they wanted attention, right? And they needed to be talked to, and they needed a place to be listened to, and to address why they're feeling alienated and why they have grievances. So this was a big aha for us, because we had to navigate the kind of interplay between education, law enforcement in ways that were really respectful of civil discourse and civil liberties.
Yeah. Jeff, you anything you want to add on that? No? Sure.
Yeah, I can add to this. Well, it always depends on countries. You know, in the US, free speech is considered highly, but yeah, here in Luxembourg it's different. Whereas the internet is a public space, we always want to make people aware. National law goes for the offline world and also for the digital world. And in the past, we also had discussions with public prosecutors in Luxembourg, and they take these matters very, very seriously because they don't want that behavior online to become like socially acceptable behavior, because that's what they said, and that's why well, we agree with that. We don't want that to become socially acceptable, because unfortunately I see that it has become more and more socially acceptable here, also in EU. If you take a look at other countries, therefore I'm also happy to see that Digital Services Act now wants to also make platforms responsible for managing this kind of illegal content.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think, as we said earlier, you know, the quiz that you presented is really a great approach, and that's an approach that can be replicated in other countries. But of course, it has to then be localized and made relevant in terms of what the norms and practices, including legal status, is in each country. Thank you very much. I just wanted to, Lena had a question in there, which I thought was interesting as well, too, in terms of the term media literacy. So if you haven't had a chance to see her question, she says, in such cases of pushback, would you argue that not using the words media literacy in the title or description of workshops, campaigns, etc., can it be helpful, or would you say it's counterproductive? So when you're doing the kinds of work that you're doing, good to say media literacy or not? Maybe I could start with you, Renee. I see you kind of shaking your head, I think.
Oh my gosh, Sally, I think we've been debating that question, I don't know, I think since the 80s. I remember being at a meeting in Canada in like 1989 or 1990, where the global media literacy community was wrestling with that issue. So I'm kind of ecumenical. I don't care what we call it. I like to call it literacy, because I think of media literacy as an expanded conceptualization of literacy. So I like that term, but that term doesn't work in Latin America as well. It doesn't work around the world, in Asia as well. So I don't care what you call it. Call it what you want, but should it involve asking critical questions about what you watch, see, and read? Yes. Should it involve bringing people together for dialogue and discussion around the ethics of being a human communicator in a digital age? Yes. Should it involve people creating media? Yes. I don't care what you call it.
Caroline, what do you do?
Yeah, I think it depends on who you're addressing, actually. I think those who hate you and who want to work against your initiatives, whatever your wording is going to be, they will find something. So don't try to adapt to them and just do your thing. That's the one thing. And then generally talking about the term media and information literacy, I think depending on what you're looking at, it's really good to talk about media and information literacy, because they might actually mean different things. And for example, when you're addressing a funder, for example, or you're looking for like a collaborator, that might be just the right word. However, when I'm imagining like you're launching your online project, or I don't know, you have a poster campaign for your workshop, I wonder if media literacy is really the word that will get people to sign up for your workshop. Maybe then it's better to really focus on very precise aspects. And even I think terms like democracy, for example, because they are such big concepts, and I'm not sure if this is always the right wording to attract people to get into there. I think it's better to look at very precise examples that are very close to people's daily life and their actual problems, and to start getting them into your projects like in this way, rather than to have like a very abstract vocabulary.
So yeah, Caroline, that is such a good point. And Pam, you just did a workshop in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is one of the swing states that is going to be super important in the election. And what did you call that workshop that got so many people to show up?
Yeah, I think that's a great point you made, Caroline, about, not forefronting media literacy, although I am personally loath to let the haters take away our language. But yeah, the workshop I called Surviving Election Season and Beyond, media literacy for concerned citizens.
Yeah. So it gets it in there at the beginning.
Yeah.
Or it gets it in there at the end, but it gets the point across
At the subtitle.
Yeah. Lena, I hope that helps a little bit. Jeff, anything you want to add? Do you talk about, do you use the term much, media literacy, in the work that you do?
Internally, we don't use it really. We always talk about raising awareness for more safer and more responsible use of media and technologies. But essentially, if you talk to our target groups, well, we need to break it down. We quite often talk about complex or complicated issues or topics, and then we can't use our professional terms when talking to, well, everyday users or really specific target groups. Like we, for example, if we talk to young people, well, we got to know our target groups, we got to know their cultures and how they and their peers talks, what is happening around them. We need to know their kind of language, their age, and then we need to adapt our content to that target group to reach them. Because if you don't do that, they don't listen to us.
Yeah.
And
I think
it's also always good to, if we want to do something for young kids, we need to get them in the process and ask them what is good for them.
Yeah. But then we use the term, I mean, we have a media literacy community, thank goodness, all the friends and colleagues that we have around us today. And I have to again do another ad for our EDMO principles on what makes for good media literacy initiatives, which we launched last Monday, which I'm hoping Chloe might put a link into in the chat. And then we need to have a little bit of a structure in which to discuss, to engage, to look for funding, to do all the things that we do. So then it probably is very relevant. Okay, I'd like to, there's a question in from Shalini. And Shalini asked the really relevant question I think everybody faces: how can we make somebody media literate who has extremist ideology or rigid mindset and perceptions? You know, how do you tackle the people who just really are at the far end of the scale? And I suppose that's a question for everybody. Anybody like to pick up on it first? Pam, your mic's on. How do you cope with the far end of the scale, people who are very extremist?
Well, what we tried to do at Courageous Conversations is just engage them. And I mean, our biggest detractor throughout Courageous Conversations, we invited she was a teacher, and we invited her to the professional development session, you know, and program too. It was frustrating. And there was one of our professional facilitators who really wanted to take her on and was sure he could convert her. And it didn't work. But I don't know. I think our way was killing them with kindness and just continuing to give them the information that we had about asking questions. And our tagline was kind of stay curious, not furious. So that's kind of where we came from.
Yeah,
Nice.
for sure. We were really influenced by the work of David McRaney, and I invite everyone to read this book. It's marvelous. It's called How Minds Change, right? And so the 3-step process is kind of magical, but like Pam says, it's no silver bullet. It's a process, and it doesn't work with everyone, but it's powerful. You know, first of all, find common ground. What do you have in common with that person? You guys both like Star Wars. Oh, how cool. You were born in the 80s. Oh, how cool, right? You both have blonde hair. Great. Find what you have in common and establish a relationship based on something you have in common. So make that person feel part of your tribe and you feel part of their tribe. So we don't have to be afraid of each other. Step 2, ask questions with an open heart. Right? Be curious about their reasoning. Listen to them. Pay attention to them, because that's really what they're craving, right? They have grievances, right? They understand the world differently than you, and they want to be heard. So give them that act of generosity. Pay attention to them. And then third, don't try to persuade them. That does not work. Do not try to persuade them. The David McRaney magic is asking people to reflect on how certain they are about their beliefs. So when people express their beliefs, like, are you 100%? What makes you certain about that? Are you 100% certain? Are you 90% certain? When people acknowledge that they have a little bit of doubt, then they can open their minds to ideas. And we have to create a safe space so people can open their own minds to doubt, because that's how minds change. People change their own minds when they feel when they feel the need to. And through dialogue and discussion, we can open a little crack, right? For people to acknowledge their own doubt and for us to acknowledge our own doubt. That's why we try to model intellectual humility. And we say, we might be wrong, right? We say, we don't have all the answers and we might be wrong, because we think modeling intellectual humility is what helps people change their own minds.
It's a term I'm definitely going to take away from today. Modeling intellectual humility. Thank you. Jeff, what about you? How do you deal with the extreme views?
Well, we don't work directly with extremist views, but I think it is essential to not always just see the black and the white. Just take it from where they are, talk to them, let them open up to you, understand their worldviews, and then of course maybe try to, like, if we go back at influences, maybe just try to talk to them and identify together, like, well, sources that they might relate to, which are not that extremist, but more nuanced and more moderate, and then maybe also show them cases from the past where someone who was the same as this person was, and how that person got from the extremist view to a change of view. So get them someone or something that they can relate with, who had similar ideas in their heads and then changed ideas over the time. Maybe that would work. But as I said before, no expert on extremist behaviors.
Actually, Jeff, I want to echo and underscore what you just said, because I think that's super important. Pam, you remember, so over the course of our 2-year journey, we got to be in contact with a lot of people in the extremism prevention business. And Pam and I had a big aha when the researchers in the extremism community said, almost all the studies of extremists and former extremists show that one of the key factors that led people to de-radicalize themselves was being exposed to unexpected acts of kindness. Pam, do you remember how our faces fell off when we learned that? We were like, oh, we have to add kindness and compassion to the magic ingredients of CourageousRI.
Yeah, and we found the work of former extremists who are now trying to get people out of extremist groups incredibly important and interesting to hear their point of view. What led them to there? Which was almost always a sense of belonging. They needed to belong somewhere, and these were the people that took them in. And then their own life experiences, getting married, having children, just getting older, were what changed things. But yeah,
that helps.
Maybe
Caroline?
Yeah, just a very quick addition, and I'm otherwise agreeing to everything you said. I think we have to be aware that we cannot reach everyone that we would like to reach. And I think what can help is actually build networks also on the ground, maybe team up with organizations who have nothing to do with media and information, but it may be like local sports club who have the best connection to people on the ground from very diverse group. Why not reach out to them and ask them if they would not be interested in functioning as kind of a mediator, for example? And the other thing, I mean, even if it might be difficult for us to reach people directly who have extremist views, there are also people who are victims to such views. And I think what we can also do, or people who have who are courageous enough to, for example, to provide counter speech online. And we can also look into how we can actually strengthen these people who maybe they shy away from the engagement because they feel threatened, and also supporting them can also indirectly, I think, contribute to problem solution here.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We're going to come to him, but I'd like to do a final round. Are you all very pessimistic, or you're all optimistic? I mean, when I looked at Jeff's figures, I think we all looked at Jeff's figures, the reporting instances online, and the numbers seem to be going up and up and up and up, and it's just a very depressing world. And so I just want to do a quick round from all of you to sort of say something hopeful and positive, or that you would like to share. Any last thoughts? Maybe I could start with you, Pam.
Well, I just have to share that I was telling Renee on our way up to an event we had last night in Providence here, that the best thing about the presentation that I gave in Pennsylvania was that a man came up to me at the end, and he had been very negative throughout the whole thing, like that. And he said, that one slide you have with people around a campfire, I sat there thinking, can people even do that anymore without getting at each other? Like, that looks like such a happy, idyllic thing. And he said, what you presented tonight gives me hope. And I thought, wow, if I can, if I can affect that curmudgeon, then maybe there is hope. And I'm an eternal optimist. So, and I've lived long enough to see the pendulum swing back and forth a number of times. And I think we've gone pretty far to the scary side. And I think a lot of people are feeling it and aren't sure what to do about it. So I think giving them tools that they can use really helps.
And the strategies we share today, hopefully as well. Jeff, what about you? Final thoughts?
Well, even though numbers are up, as you see in our reports, I also think that there have never been that many actions taken on various local, national, international level to combat hate speech online. And I'm just an optimist. So if we follow up with this, continue like this.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we're putting together something like that today, we had plenty to choose from. You know, we're delighted with the people who joined us, but I think if we'd done this maybe a couple of years ago, it wouldn't have been quite so easy. So we have a growing community. Caroline, what about you?
I think if we look at it's a big picture, I think it can be sometimes a bit overwhelming and might even push some people into passiveness to say, okay, sorry, I cannot change this, and we will definitely not solve online hatred and delete all disinformation. But I think what is important is that we set ourselves important goals and see where we can actually have an impact and where we can make a difference. And I think this is first of all in our direct environment, like among the people next to us, and they're like for myself, I mean, we talked about online hatred also against media literacy trainers or fact-checking organizations, but we also get all those mails from people saying, oh, thank you so much for this fact check. Finally, I had a great counter argument for my annoying aunt. And I think we really have to stick also to these small moments of success that should encourage us to move on.
Absolutely. Renee? You're an optimist.
Well, I am, but in 20 days or so, we face a historic election, and I have fully prepared myself for the worst, because the arc of history is long, and we have collectively in years faced some very, very dark days. And so I'm not sure if it's getting better or it's getting worse. I see the rise of nationalism and racism all around the world, and it scares the hell out of me. And I believe that our fear for what could happen is highly motivating.
Yes.
because we under a world full of hate. We understand the real ways in which dehumanizing people leads to the unimaginable destructions of our human experience. So part of our is holding on to this idea that love is stronger than hate, and that by coming together and holding hands and taking our small actions, our small little things, what little things we can do that collectively those can make a difference. We just have to try that.
Renee, thank you very much. And particularly you and Pam for joining us early in the morning. I know it's not so, I hope you've lots of coffee now. The rest of us, it was easier time of day. I just have a couple of short announcements we'd like to make of campaigns to make sure everybody is aware of a couple of campaigns that are going on this week before I bring the session to the end. And that's the CourageousRI. So that's the slide from the road out from CourageousRI. So that's the link if anybody doesn't have that yet. I am also very happy to announce that you have the Media Literacy Week going on. These are the activities that you're taking. Sorry, this should be Renee, actually. Renee should be announcing these points. Sorry, over to you, Renee, or Pam.
Oh, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. We're celebrating Global Media Literacy Week, and in the US, we're celebrating National Media Literacy Week. We overwhelmed with media literacy weeks. Everyone in this room is here because you're somehow connected to that. So it's kind of exciting, isn't it? That there's some visibility happening as a result of this great work.
Thank you very much, Renee. I think we're moving on then to the closing out. Yes, we'd like to remind you then about two campaigns in particular. First of all, the Post with Care campaign. This is the UNESCO campaign, which starts tomorrow, tuned to the Global Media Information Literacy Week, as we just mentioned, that we're all involved with. It's called Post with Care. Look out for it, share it with everybody, localize it if you can. It's a really good campaign, and there's links to resources and materials from UNESCO about it. So that's an important campaign. And then we also have, and it was mentioned earlier, in fact, by Jeff, the Media Smart Online campaign, which comes from BIC, the Better Internet for Kids initiative, which is run by European Schoolnet. And the first rollout, this is across Europe, is going to be tomorrow, the 24th of October, and it's going to run for a month. And so you're really, really welcome to help us with that. It's being localized in all member state countries, lots of resources and materials available and connected to that as well too. So feel free to share all these resources. And then I think we come to our last slide, which is indeed, we have two more events this week, and then Chloe and I are going on holidays. The one tomorrow, which has been organized, so we're doing it together with Deutsche Welle Academy on Media Literacy, and that is specifically on marginalized communities. So please join us, same time, same place tomorrow for that one. If you haven't already registered, you can still register online on our website. And then the one on Friday, which is organized with EDMO, the European Digital Media Observatory, and that is more of a training session, and it's called Beyond the Hype, Practical Strategies for Successful Influencer Collaborations in Media Literacy. So we'll have people who are working directly with influencers and explaining how they do it. Please join us then. Love to see you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much, Jeff, Renee, Pam, and Caroline for joining us this afternoon. And we look forward to seeing everybody else in the not too distant future and for being part of our community. Thank you so much. My thanks as always to Chloe.